had the honour and pleasure of being Minister for Crofting, and I still take a very active interest in crofting through my constituency work as a member of the Scottish Parliament for Argyll and Bute, and indeed for a brief period chair of the cross-party group on crofting. So brief that I never actually got to chair a single meeting, but nonetheless the intention was there. And after leaving government in 2014, I went to do some work, continued in Argyll and Bute, went to do some work at Glasgow University on culture and governance as a professor there. One of the issues that I was deeply involved in there and in the work I was doing in the Rural Affairs Committee was on land reform, and we might touch upon that at some stage today too. But in August last year, Nicola asked me to take on a new role in government as Minister for UK negotiations on Scotland's place in Europe, which is a very long title, which has been, as you correctly say, abbreviated to Brexit Minister. And I have three roles, essentially. The first of which is to be the lead negotiator for Scotland and the Scottish Government in the discussions with the UK Government. When I was appointed, there was no structure for those negotiations. After a great deal of deliberation and discussion, a new part of the Joint Ministerial Committee structure was established, the Joint Ministerial Committee European Negotiations, in which I represent Scotland. And that fits into an overall joint ministerial structure which is not effective at all. And all the studies that have taken place in the joint ministerial structure since devolution attest to the fact this is not a structure that works. There is really no accountability within the structure. The structure is totally controlled from London. All meetings take place in London, always chaired by the UK Minister, and there is no decision-making function within it. But this new committee actually agreed a formal remit, which is not true of most of the other parts of the JMC structure, and the committee's role is to agree on the issues of importance before Article 50 is triggered. Article 50 is the clause in the Lisbon Treaty that allows a country to withdraw from the EU. It has never been used before, it was never designed to be used, it was designed as a deterrent. But there was to be an agreement on how that happened, and then there is to be oversight of the negotiations that take place between the UK and Europe on matters of devolved competence. So Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland are all represented, but as is always the case with JMC, the devolved administrations are in a minority. JMC-EM usually has no less than 8 UK ministers attending, and then normally 1 from Scotland, 1 from Wales, and always 2 from Northern Ireland, which is how it works, although at the present moment none from Northern Ireland, which makes the structure a little bit difficult. I once, as a member of the JMC Europe in 2009, which I was for a year, I once went to a meeting in JMC Europe in London in which there were 21 UK ministers, myself and Roger Morgan. So it's not an easy negotiating structure to be a part of. So that's my first job, and I'll say a word in a moment about how that has gone, but there are very considerable difficulties in taking the issues forward in that. The second job I was asked to do was to be involved in drawing up the options that Scotland had in the situation we found ourselves. And Scotland, of course, on June the 23rd last year voted 62% to remain in Europe and 38% to leave. That's a very decisive outcome. The rest of the UK, each part voted differently. Overall, England and Wales voted to leave, narrowly voted to leave. Northern Ireland voted to stay, London decisively voted to stay, but our vote was the most decisive of all. Every local authority area in Scotland made that decision. But that means there is a democratic problem. Because Scotland wants to stay, and Scotland's indicated it wanted to stay, the rest of the UK wants to leave. How do we square that circle? And the options that I was asked to develop, along with a large number of other people, were options that could take us forward in those circumstances. And what we did is last December we published this document, which I'm sure you have all read and know intimately. And the document, Scotland's Place in Europe, lays out a way in which we could move forward, which would allow Scotland to remain within the European single market, which is of particular importance. The single market is much more, Martin Schulz, the former President of the European Parliament, said it's much more than an accountant's club. The single market is about how we live and work together right across Europe. And it's a profoundly important and very innovative way of living and working. So it would allow us to stay in the single market, even if the UK decided to withdraw, though the first choice in this paper was for the whole of the UK to stay in the single market. Now, we published this on December the 20th. We put it in as the first, and I think it's still the only really substantial contribution to debate. There is a Welsh paper, which is actually very good too, and a much shorter, slightly similar paper from Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland. Very little from the UK government, only the white paper is essentially a fleshed out version of a single speech that the Prime Minister gave. We published this, we presented it to the JMC, I made a presentation on it in London in the middle of January, and it is formally still in discussion, which actually means that nothing's happening. Because although there are groups of civil servants and others discussing it, really no progress is being made. And an illustration of that, yesterday, was shown in an article in the Herald, which talked about migration, and said that the issue of migration, which is quite crucial to membership of the single market, had been raised in the House of Commons by Stephen Gethens, one of the SNP MPs. David Davis had said he was interested in what was being said, interested in what we had said, and it was being discussed with the Home Office. An hour later, the Prime Minister's spokesperson in Downing Street said that there would be no devolution of migration within these islands. So the type of negotiation we're having is we have a group of civil servants looking at things. That's still going on. The migration group has not yet reported. We raise it in committee, and then the decision is made, and that's over and done with, and we haven't been part of that decision. And that's a very, very difficult way to negotiate. That happened with the single market membership. Published in December, tabled middle of December, 48 hours before there was a full discussion of it, the Prime Minister ruled out the UK being the single market. So these discussions are awkward and difficult and not making progress, but in here is still the means by which we could make progress. Because although the first choice was the single market, there were two other choices. The second is for Scotland to remain in the single market. And that is perfectly feasible through EFTA and EEA, the European Free Trade Area, the European Economic Area. That's a way in which we could go forward. And we would leave the customs union with the rest of the UK, so there would be no difficulty in trading in this large island, but there would be continued involvement in the single market by Scotland. And the third part of this paper is to do with devolution. Because if you're going to take that route, then you have to strengthen the devolved settlements. You have to make sure that the powers you need to be part of EFTA and EEA are available to the Scottish Parliament. And this is about how that would go forward. So my second job was to make sure that we drew this up and then took this forward and continued to promote it. And I continue to argue that there is a solution to the problem that we have that lies in this paper. Regrettably, it does not appear at the present moment as if that's a solution the UK government want to take. Because in terms of Article 50, that is meant to be triggered this month. And no matter what you did to me here today, I could not tell you when it will be triggered or what will be in the letter. And if you think about that for a moment, I'm speaking as a member of the committee that's meant to agree that. And there has been no discussion of that and remains no discussion. Now, there was speculation last night led by the Financial Times, I heard about it just as I was leaving here, that Article 50 will be triggered on Tuesday, which is possible in the parliamentary timetable. I do not know. And I don't think I will know if it's triggered on Tuesday, possibly till Tuesday. The Scottish Government only saw the UK White Paper 40 minutes before it was published. So there is a real difficulty in getting this to work, but we remain committed to making it work. But the third thing I do is to talk to people. I'm very keen to hear people's views about what we should do. And yesterday I was speaking to a conference organised by the Faculty of Advocates. Today I'm here. Wednesday night I was having dinner with the Dundee Chamber of Commerce, and so it goes on. And I am trying to understand the concerns that people in Scotland have, to help to address those concerns, if possible to be positive about them, because there's a lot of difficulty in this, but to see if we can find a way forward. Because there are only three possible outcomes from where we are. The first of which is we leave the EU with the rest of the UK on the terms set by the rest of the UK. That's perfectly possible. We don't know what those terms are. We won't be involved very much in setting those terms by the example we've got now, but we could just do that. Although the difficulty and danger of doing that is we will find ourselves cut off from the European single market. We will find ourselves without any indication of what future trading and other arrangement will be, and we will have to take at face value the assertions that are being made about negotiations by the UK which I think I am sceptical about, knowing what I know and seeing what I see. The second option is that this paper actually does succeed. But even at this very late stage, we are able to influence what takes place. It's vital that we do so this month. It's vital that the Article 50 letter refers to what we would like to achieve in this paper, because it will refer to what happens with Northern Ireland and Gibraltar, which will get what is called a differential deal. Now, Scotland and Wales wants those too, but we have to put those on the table at the start of the negotiations. And both Wales and ourselves are agreed on that. If you don't put it in at the start, and that's what we're being told in Brussels too, it gets harder and harder to get that type of deal. But the third option is an independence referendum. Now, we've tried to say that that's, whilst of course nobody would be surprised that I want to do that, it's not what we have gone into negotiations seeking to achieve. We've compromised. The Scottish Government has created a detailed compromise which we think will work. And we put that on the table. But if that compromise cannot work and we do not accept that it's leaving on other people's terms, then that will have to be the choice. And the choice will be to say to the people of Scotland at the end of the negotiating period, because people need to know what they're voting on, either you choose to leave the UK terms, or there is another vision of independence, and you choose between those two. So those are the three likely outcomes. Now that's a sort of high level. Let me just bring this now to what actually affects people. And throughout Scotland, almost every part of Scotland, in fact every part of Scotland, will be affected in some way or another by leaving the EU. Everybody will have passed, when they were driving here, signs on the road that said infrastructure project, road, partnership with the EU. And that money may continue and may continue to be available, but we don't know. And in reality, Scotland has done well out of the EU, because the principle in the EU is making sure that need is addressed, and particularly in infrastructure. Scotland has done well out of those sort of projects. But it also does well in terms of agricultural support. Let me start there. 16% of the total sum that comes in agricultural support from Europe comes to Scotland. If that share were to be calculated on the standard way of calculating money coming from in the UK, the Barnett formula, that would only be 8%, 8.8%. So the amount of support coming for agriculture in its widest sense would be halved unless there were special circumstances put in place. And that's a pretty dramatic change. Now, that's bad enough on the financial side, but we also don't know what's going to happen on the legislative side. Because although crofting is legislated for by the Scottish Parliament, the wider agricultural support mechanism is, of course, European. And it presently operates by means of the Council of Ministers, decisions of the Council of Ministers, then implemented by the 4 nations of the UK in different manners, with slightly different priorities. And that's why we've been able to operate LFA, for example, which is not operated in other parts. Now, we thought, and I think everybody thought, because that was a promise during the campaign, that those powers, all the powers that related to things that the Scottish Parliament did, would automatically transfer to Holyrood after the UK left the EU. That was a promise. Indeed, the word automatic is used in the Leave campaign's brochures. Well, that's no longer the promise. Now what is being said is that those powers will return to the UK, and they will then be, in the Prime Minister's words, a sensible discussion about how those powers will be transferred from London. Now, if you were of a cynical disposition, and of course I'm not, you would think that the sensible discussion means that that won't actually happen, and that those powers will stay. And the language that's also being used now is to say that none of those powers should be distributed in a way that can harm something that is called the UK single market. Now, there is no UK single market. There never has been. There's a unified market in certain areas, but in other areas there's always been different ways of doing things, and that's quite normal, and it works in that way. Agricultural support works in that way. Things are supported here that aren't supported there. But if you bring that concept, this new concept, the UK single market, in and use that as a determinant, then actually devolution becomes less and less important, less and less relevant. So we think, and all the evidence seems to be, that agricultural support powers will stay within London. And if they were to operate as the Welsh have suggested, even if that were to happen, if they were to operate in the same way as the European Council, where there's joint decision making, and I've been a minister that's gone to the European Council, then perhaps you could discuss that. But that's not the proposal. The proposal is decisions made there. So the first problem is it does look as if agricultural support, both financially and in terms of organisation, is going to be much more centralised in London than it presently is. The second issue is connected to money, of course, too. It is that question of grant. Because it's not just agricultural support, it's SRDP activity, it's rural development funding, it's social and economic funding. And we don't know what's going to happen to those funding streams. We have no idea. There has been no discussion of those funding streams. Now, those of you who remember when SRDP moved from one form to another form, I was there, I bear the scars of it, it didn't happen seamlessly. It didn't happen that you just moved from one grant flow to another grant flow. It took time to make that change, even if you knew where you were going. In 2 years' time, it may be that these schemes simply stop, and we don't know what's going to replace them. So there is a very considerable concern on money too. And then there's a wider concern about what leaving the single market will mean, particularly in terms of employment. Scotland is a country that benefits from migration. Migration to Scotland is economically beneficial. Each migrant into Scotland makes a contribution. And that needs to be said, and said clearly, because it's the truth. In addition, 90% of the increase in population that we want in Scotland in the next 20 years comes from European migration. I represent a constituency which is losing people. You need people coming into Scotland in order to make a difference, in almost every sector. Not just in agriculture, though that is true in parts of agriculture, but particularly, you could tourism, very dependent upon it. Fish farming, very dependent. University research, we're one of the great university research countries in the world. 25% of university research staff come from other European nations. Tech industries, really producing lots of new jobs. That is an international market for talent. And if you can't get people in, particularly from Europe, those jobs will simply go to mainland Europe. Already, Germany, Frankfurt and Paris are already competing for a lot of those tech jobs and advertising for people to go and live and work there from Scotland. The financial sector, I could go on. Actually, one of the astonishing ones is the abattoir sector. 60% of the staff in the abattoirs are from other European countries. There will be enforced vegetarians if this actually goes ahead. So, in almost every part of life, there are these difficulties that we need to address. And the question is why? Why are we doing this? Is there some pot of gold which will make this all worthwhile? Because this is a question you have to ask. This is not something that I have ever thought was a good idea. I've been strongly pro-European all my political life. But if there was demonstrably some benefit that could be gained by this, then at least you could understand it. There is no such gain. I've not had demonstrated to me by anybody this great benefit. Now, I will accept that in fishing in Scotland, there are benefits to be gained by not being in the common fisheries policy, and I think that's irrefutable. But actually, that's not the same as saying there is some great national benefit which will accrue to us. Because people say, well, we'll be able to sell more whisky to India. That's one of the great arguments that's used. But in reality, even if you were to sell an additional bottle of spirits to every single person in India, it still wouldn't make an enormous difference. But it's not going to happen anyway. Because the Prime Minister went to India last October, determined to have this new trade deal, and came back empty-handed. And she came back empty-handed because the key issue for India is migration. It's young people, talented young people with degrees, who want to come and work at least for a while in this country. And migration is non-negotiable. And I want to just conclude on that. What is driving this? It's quite important to stand back and say, why is this happening? And there are two issues that dominate this debate, South and Port. The first is migration. There is an absolute fixation on the issue of migration. And you cannot have this conversation without talking about migration. Now, we have a different set of experiences. But we also should be positive because the evidence about migration is positive, even south of the border. Migration is economically positive for almost every part of the UK. And the migration issue has been driven by a tabloid press which has become obsessed with the issue, and it is driving this damaging debate. But there's a second, even more abstruse part of this debate, which is the verdicts of courts outside the UK. Now, the moment I say that, people's eyes glaze over and they think, what on earth are you talking about? But in reality, the issue of the UK Parliament being sovereign, of not being told what to do by any other body, and particularly not by the European Court of Justice, is also a huge part of this debate. And that's a very old-fashioned view of what a country or a nation is. That you have this sovereign parliament, and it cannot be interfered with. And that is a huge part of this discussion. You hear it all over the place. I debated in Edinburgh with Michael Gove a month ago, and this was a big part of his argument. Not only will things be better, in some vague and unspecified way, but the UK Parliament would have restored to it all the power that it used to have. And this is, I don't know if you saw in the Times earlier this week, this is Empire 2. And they actually, Ian Fox actually used this word. This is about going backwards. This is about a vision of something that probably never existed. But they're going to recapture this vision. And that's very dangerous. It's very damaging for us, because Scotland's a small European nation that has to be fleet of foot and modern and flexible and able to do things in a different way. And if we are dragged back and out of that, then things are going to be difficult, because it doesn't relate to what we need to do and where we are. And if you have that view of the world, that sovereigntist view of everything flowing from the UK Parliament, you also have no time for devolution, because devolution hems in the decisions of the UK Parliament. So we're on a trajectory in this that's very, very concerning. It's very concerning for Scottish democracy, it's very concerning for Scottish life, and I think it's very concerning for rural Scotland. I'm a representative of a rural and extreme rural constituency. I can't see the advantages of this for the people I represent. I can only see the disadvantages. And what we need to do is to find as a nation a way forward. And I just finally repeat the point. There are three ways forward. One is just to accept it. One is to continue to try to get this compromise solution, which at least mitigates the worst aspects and allows us to continue with some of the relationships. Or we make a choice of a different future. That's where we now are, and that's what we've got to contend with. The timescale to contend with it should be about 2 years. That's the good news. This shouldn't drag on forever. Not everything will be resolved during the Article 50 process, but fortunately those who drafted Article 50 realised that you had to get a resolution. So if the Article 50 letter is submitted next week, as would now appear to be likely, though not certain, then we are talking about the middle of March 2019 as being the end point of at least this part of the discussion. And we have to focus during that time to get the best for Scotland, and the best for rural Scotland, and the best for Scotland. But I'm open to